This week on Siskel and Ebert, Oprah Winfrey, Danny Glover, and Thandie Newton star in the story of Beloved.
Laura Flynn Boyle is one of three sisters searching for happiness.
And witches Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman conjure up some practical magic.
Spare rooms. Could stay tonight if you had a mind to.
Two former slaves are reunited when Danny Glover arrives at Oprah Winfrey's house in an opening scene from Beloved, one of the new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. Beloved, based on the novel by Nobel Prize winner Toni Morrison, is a film that circles around the pain at the heart of its story. The fact that Setha, the runaway slave played by Oprah Winfrey, killed her baby daughter rather than have the child be returned to slavery. Now years have passed and Setha is free, but the ghost of the dead girl still haunts her home. And when a friend from the old days, Paul D., played by Danny Glover, enters her home, he senses a supernatural being.
Let's go, girl. What kind of evil you got in there?
It ain't evil. Just sad. Come on.
Paul D.'s presence seems to quiet the evil in the house where Setha lives with her daughter, Denver, played by Kimberly Elise. The adults talk about the plantation where they met, named Sweet Home.
How come everybody who run off from Sweet Home can't stop talking about it? Looks like if it was so sweet, you wouldn't have run away.
Girl, who do you think you talking to?
True. She right, Scepter. It wasn't sweet. It sure wasn't home.
Then another visitor arrives at the house, Beloved, played by Thandie Newton. At first, her identity is a mystery, but Beloved and Denver bond like sisters, which in a way, they are.
You won't ever leave us, will you?
No. Never. This is where I am.
Toni Morrison says it took her 3 viewings to fully appreciate Beloved, and I know what she meant. This is a film constructed out of the fragments of memory and experience, and if you haven't read the book, you'll have trouble at first understanding the story. The movie was directed by Jonathan Demme, who uses wonderful performances and an overarching supernatural mood to create his effect. The ads, of course, try to package the story as uplifting, almost cheerful, but it's very dark. The painful aftermath of the greatest sin in our nation's history. It's a strong, original film.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And you mentioned that it took Toni Morrison 3 viewings to appreciate the picture. Well, it took me 2. But especially after the second viewing, I was mightily impressed with this film in a variety of ways. As an historical document about the Reconstruction era, during which the horror of slavery was still very much alive, even though the slaves had been freed, and also as a tribute to generations of pioneer women in the African-American community. And their ability to keep their families together is summed up in a beautiful speech that also shows Winfrey's ability to be a ferociously powerful actress.
Got a tree on my back. And I hate my house. And nothing in between but the daughter I'm holding in my arms. No, baby. No running from nothing. You hear me? I will never run from another thing on this earth.
Hers, I think, is a complete performance as she displays a range in this picture from maternal tenderness to wounded victim to hopeful lover. Thumbs up for her and for director Jonathan Demme's distinctive Beloved.
Oh, I agree with you, Gene, about Oprah Winfrey's performance, and I think all the performances are good, and the most interesting in a way is what Thandie Newton does with Beloved, because she's basically, we don't want to give away the whole story, but she's basically a stranger to the body that she occupies, and a stranger to speech and to relationships, and that alien quality that comes across is very effective. And this is a really complex and interesting movie. You know, it does justice to the novel, which was also complex and weaved around, because in a way, the central character, Setha, can hardly touch that event that her whole life revolves around. She can't even touch it in memory. And so the movie revolves around it instead of leading up to it and coming down after it. And when you see it, when the movie is over, you understand everything. But during the experience, sometimes you're
lost.
at sea.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. But you know, now we talk about epic pictures. When we use that phrase, it usually means a physical landscape. You know, Lawrence of Arabia, the classic epic. But this is a human epic, and I don't mean to be glib with that, but really, this whole time, place, world experience we're given.
You can easily see how this could have been turned into material that would be much less challenging and much less textured, and it wouldn't have been as good a film.
We may not have given Demi enough credit. This is one of the great directors, and it is a beautiful-looking film.
And also the writer, Richard LaGravenese, who took the novel and some earlier drafts of the screenplay and shaped it into this final form for Demi. Coming up later, Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman cast their spells in Practical Magic.
Hang on to your husband, girl.
Coming up next, the most controversial film of the season, Happiness.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you. But I'm not laughing.
How's it going? She only knew how I felt, but she doesn't even know I exist. I bore people. Who is that boring person, they think? I've never before met anyone so boring.
Suburban New Jersey is the far shore of loneliness and desolation, and Happiness, the much-debated new film by Todd Solondz, that won the Critics' Prizes at Cannes and Toronto, that will disturb many audiences with its sad portraits of sexual desperation and perversity. The story centers around the lives of three sisters. The first sister, named Trish, is played by Cynthia Stevenson as an apparently happy homemaker whose husband, played by Dylan Baker, is a psychiatrist.
Hey, Billy. What's going on?
Nothing.
He's depressed.
Well, was anything the matter?
I don't want to talk about it.
Ignore him. He's just doing it for attention. He thinks she'll be impressed. As if.
What Trish doesn't suspect is that her husband is a pedophile. The second sister, named Joy and played by Jane Addams, has low self-esteem because she's still single and her life is going nowhere. She meets a Russian immigrant taxi driver played by Jared Harris.
Do you like men?
Yes. But it's not so simple.
Are you lesbian?
No.
It's all right. If you are lesbian. I like lesbian.
What Joy doesn't suspect is that the taxi driver cannot be trusted. The third sister, named Helen, is played by Lara Flynn Boyle. A semi-famous poet, she feels she doesn't really deserve her success.
I'm just so tired of being admired all the time. I mean, all these men, they're beautiful, artistic minds, great sex, the whole package, but hollow.
What neither of the other sisters suspect is that Helen is lonely too, so lonely that when she gets an obscene phone call, she engages the caller in conversation. But when they meet, it's just not the same.
Yes?
All of these stories in Happiness are interwoven with others as the movie moves unpredictably between tragedy and humor. The audience is thrown off balance. We're not sure whether to laugh or be shocked or both. And in forcing us into that middle ground, it works a kind of sneaky magic. We don't like these characters, but we're haunted by them.
Well, Roger, we are shocked. I mean, that's clearly shocking development in this picture. You focused on the three sisters. I want to look at the picture from the male characters. All of these guys, and I praise the film for the accurate way this is done, are cases of arrested sexual development. And all of their problems come out of that. And Todd Solondz, the director, has once again focused on emotional problems. He did it in Welcome to the Dollhouse with an 11-year-old girl dealing with the terrors of entering junior high school. And once again now, I mean, I think Sigmund Freud would have approved of this film and really enjoyed it because the development of these guys simply haven't connected with their sexuality or with women.
It's true even of the psychiatrist who is a pedophile, and those are the scenes that are going to bother people the most. It's not for younger viewers, and people are going to have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, the word shocking is, I think, the key word to describe this picture. Coming up next, something's brewing between Sandra Bullock and Aidan Quinn in Practical Magic.
Do you mind if I just took a look around?
You know, she screwed Coach Abbott. Baker?
Don't do that.
It wasn't me.
Well, I
was you.
Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman play sisters living on a Massachusetts island who are descended from a long line of real-life witches in the funny and clever film called Practical Magic, which succeeds through a smart script based on Alice Hoffman's novel. This story works because it takes witchery seriously, which means that the town residents truly hate the Owen sisters.
Yep, that's right. I'm back. Woo! Hang on to your husbands, girl.
The fear and hatred of the Owens extends a generation to Bullock's two young daughters, who she tries to protect not just from the villagers, but also from her eccentric aunts, who are also witches.
Fine, but I do not want them dancing naked under the full moon.
Of course not. The nudity is entirely optional, as you will remember.
This is an extremely well-cast movie with Stockard Channing and Diane Weiss as the aunts who brought up Bullock and Kidman after the girl's parents died. Now, a legend about these witches says that if they fall in love with a man, his future is truly bleak. Bullock fears this will affect her chances with an Arizona cop who is investigating the disappearance of Kidman's boyfriend. He's played by, effectively, Aidan Quinn.
But he basically kidnapped her, and it.
Ooh. He kidnapped you?
Well, no, he didn't really kidnap her. He sort of like just a little nap. No, there was a car, and she would, you know, what happened was that she just, you should know she has the worst taste in men.
Now, I mentioned that the script takes witchcraft seriously. Well, it does, because we're always talking about, Roger, how we want some how-to films. So if we're going to cover a subject, you know, get specific. Well, we learned some new potions, some new rules, and it is all treated seriously by the cast. So we buy into it, too. I was surprised how much I enjoyed Practical Magic.
Gene, I don't believe we even saw the same movie. This movie doesn't take witchcraft seriously. It's like a sitcom. And it's childish in all of its plotting, its characters, and its development. Right. And incidentally, this movie is a comedy, you know. You haven't even suggested that. It's not a serious movie about witchcraft.
There are some funny elements
in it.
No,
it's a comedy from beginning to end.
Oh, I don't think so.
In intention, it certainly is.
I think that the business involving whether these women are going to have any kind of relationships is dead serious.
I don't think so. I mean, I found this movie to be really pretty dumb, as a matter of fact. And as for the two older aunts, I wanted to see more of them. As for the persecution of this poor family, hey, you know, if you've been witches for 300 years and the townspeople know that, why stay there so your kids can be persecuted?
Well, that's the story, Roger. We ought to see more of the witchcraft.
Yeah, in other words, they stay there just so there can be a plot.
Even some of the rules, some of the potions were different.
They have an old book with a lot of stuff in it, and they mix up stuff, you know, like...
Yeah, the old book was new to me.
Now, I don't think that there's really a lot of information in this movie about witchcraft.
I think there's some of it.
Okay, next movie. Our next movie is Love is the Devil, based on the life and loves of Francis Bacon, who was the greatest British painter of the 20th century and also, perhaps, the most miserable. Bacon's art distorted the human figure into grotesque and twisted shapes, but he found beauty and passion in the ugliness, and his style was so distinctive that to see one of his paintings is to recognize his work anywhere instantly. As the movie opens, a burglar has just broken in through the skylight to rob him.
And who might you be? Well, not much of a burglar, are you? Take your clothes off. Come to bed, and you can have whatever you want.
That's Derek Jacobi, looking uncannily like the real Francis Bacon. The burglar, named George and played by Daniel Craig, comes to stay. He and Bacon become lovers, and in private, the working-class man was the dominant partner, but in public, he feels insecure, and Bacon ridicules him.
You know, I did have a life before I met you, Francis. You know, wide circle of friends.
The movie has extraordinary scenes of Bacon at work, trying to exorcise his demons with his art.
Who, if I cried out, would hear me?
This is one of the few film biographies of artists I've seen that doesn't make excuses. Love is the Devil suggests that genius in this case was its own excuse. Nor does the movie stretch to make connections between the life and the art. The connections here, I think, are pretty obvious. Now, it's too bad that because the estate wouldn't allow the filmmaker to show any of Bacon's paintings, we don't see any of Bacon's actual work in the film, but what's brilliant is the way the director finds visual equivalence for it by shooting into reflecting surfaces, by distorting images, by using the human figure in ways that Bacon did, so that at the end of this film, I think you'd be so familiar with the way Bacon saw the world, you would be able to walk into an art gallery, even if you knew nothing of Francis Bacon's work, and say, that's a Bacon.
Well, I don't know if you could do that, but I'll tell you one thing you couldn't do. You couldn't walk out of the theater and attempt to draw something like that Bacon's work. Not
unless you were a great artist.
No, I think this raises the intellectual question. Can you make a film about an artist without showing the art?
And of course you can. You like that movie about Picasso. We both on this show liked a movie based on a novel, and we didn't get to see the novel on
There
screen.
were fake Picassos in the background many times in that film.
This movie is basically about a man's life, not about his art anyway.
Well, the only reason we're interested in him is because of his art, and I want to see the art.
Surely you're not saying this is a bad movie.
I didn't say it's a bad movie. I'm saying it is a diminished movie, a seriously diminished movie, because you don't see the images of bodies ripped open and evisceration and torture and blood, and you don't see that in the film.
You feel them, you sense them,
Roger,
you see the life that produced them, and you see a great performance.
But that's because you and I have advanced knowledge, and not
very few people are likely to see this movie who don't know who Francis Bacon is.
They may know the name, but I don't know if they know the art that well. And the film should have somehow figured out a way to reflect the art much better.
Coming up next, the tour guide becomes as much of a tourist attraction as Manhattan itself in the cruise.
Fasten your seatbelt.
Our next film, called The Cruise, is about a character you won't easily forget. On the surface, he looks and acts like the kind of frantic character who, if you were seated next to him on a bus, you might consider changing seats. But that would be your loss. His name is Timothy Levitch, nicknamed Speed, who is an ace tour guide on a Manhattan bus tour. And he's a font of information, especially about the literary history of certain New York City neighborhoods.
4 blocks from where H.L. Mencken lives, 4 blocks from where Theodore Dreiser lives, 5 blocks from where Nathaniel West lives, 5 blocks from where D.H. Lawrence lives lasciviously.
Where Speed may lose his audience is when the focus of his tour unintentionally switches from Manhattan to Speed's own psyche.
I was overwhelmed. I was re-emerged into my own naivete. I couldn't believe how angry the city was with me. And it seemed like a vindictive woman to be like no reason whatsoever, just by the pure rage of its own existence.
Thank you, but where is the refund office? Of course, you can enjoy Speed as a performance artist, which he certainly is, and also as a most intelligent urban poet. But at about the 2/3 mark of this 76-minute documentary, I was prepared to get off the bus. I gave a marginal thumbs up to director Bennett Miller, and I sincerely hope that Speed Levitch reaches peace in his obviously troubled relationships with his parents, especially his father.
You know, I thought it got interesting toward the end because you realize that this guy who was projecting this whole persona into his job as a tour guide is actually dealing with all kinds of other issues that are pressed just underneath the surface of this film and keep trying to bubble up. And you watch that, that's what the movie is really about. Can Speed continue to play this role of a colorful character, or will he throw himself under the bus?
Well, he'll keep his job until too many people complain. But what do you normally get on a tour? The name of that building. He's communicating to these people not only that architecture is something to look at, but that literary figures are someone
not just something to look at. I love his whole sexual metaphor for that building. That speech alone is worth the price of admission. We'll be back in a moment. Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed on this week's show. 2 thumbs up for Beloved, a difficult but deeply felt film about the lasting pain of slavery, with strong performances by Oprah Winfrey, Danny Glover, and Thandie Newton. 2 more thumbs up for Happiness, which walks the line between the shocking and the comic in its portrait of lonely, desperate people. We split, however, on Practical Magic. I found it to be too scary for children and too childish for adults. Gene, however, thought the cast, headed by Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman, made the material work. A split decision on Love is the Devil, the sordid and perceptive biography of British painter Francis Bacon. Gene thought it was crippled by not being able to show his paintings. Finally, 2 thumbs up for the documentary The Cruise, which opens next week in New York and then moves on around the country.
And remember, you can hear our reviews on our website at Siskel-Ebert.com. And next week we'll be back with reviews of more new movies, including the satiric comedy Pleasantville, starring Jeff Daniels, Joan Allen, and William H. Macy, and also Apt Pupil, based on a novella by Stephen King, and starring Ian McKellen and Brad Redfro. That's next week. And until then, the balcony is closed.
Tonight, get the great taste of the grill with Gorton's grilled fillets, sizzling with flavors like lemon, pepper, or garlic butter.
There's one way to guarantee whiter teeth. 1-2 Whiten by Natural White whitens teeth. Safe, effective. 1-2 Whiten by Natural White. We guarantee whiter teeth.
If you like eating caramel apples, you'll love Tootsie Caramel Apple Pops. So good, only the stick will remain. From Tootsie.
Nothing tastes like popcorn cooked in a pot on the stove. Except, new home-style microwave popcorn from Pop Secret.